Hey y'all, welcome back to my series covering the 40K timeline. This is part 6 and the finale, so if you're interested, go check out the other parts of my channel, but without further ado, let's get into this. When we last left off, the 41st millennium had just begun, and with it came the return of a very old race. The Necrons who put themselves asleep long ago began waking up around this time, and they began overthrowing whatever races had settled on their tomb worlds, and they pretty quickly established themselves as one of the biggest threats in the galaxy. Around this time, guess what? There's more war, with some you might have heard of, like the Damocles Crusade where the Imperium fought the Tau, but a far greater threat was rapidly approaching. This is when the Tyranids showed up and began the Tyrannic Wars, starting with the star system of Tyran, which, yes, that's where they get their name from. The Tyranids caught almost everyone off guard, and just like the Necrons did, Hive Fleet Behemoth established itself as the greatest threat to the galaxy. And soon, another Hive Fleet shows up. Hive Fleet Gorgon pulls up to chomp on the Tau, showing that there could possibly be infinite amounts of Tyranids heading this way, and we would never know about it. Cut forward through a bunch of battles and new contenders like Ghazghkull Thraka and a new Hive Fleet showing up, and the galaxy as a whole, but especially the Imperium's in pretty rough shape. But don't worry, it gets worse, because at the end of the 41st millennium, Abaddon the Despoiler launches his 13th Black Crusade, and this one actually did something. Abaddon attempted to take the Imperial-held world of Cadia. The planet got overrun by traitor space marines and demons, but it wouldn't fall. So Abaddon decided that if he couldn't have it, then no one can, and threw a blackstone fortress into the planet's surface. This killed most of the planet's residents and destroyed the world's blackstone pylons, allowing the Eye of Terror to expand and devour the world, ultimately resulting in Cadia's destruction. This was by far the greatest victory for the traitors since the Horus Heresy. Cadia's destruction allowed the Eye of Terror to expand, getting the heretics one step closer to their ultimate goal of destroying Terra itself. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, around this time the Adeptus Mechanicus reported that the Golden Throne was beginning to fail, and that they had no idea how to fix it. Soon the Emperor would die, and leave all of humanity in darkness to be devoured by thirsting gods. Hooray! But suddenly, a light would appear when Archmagos Dominus Belisarius called, try saying that 5 times fast, and a group of Eldar called the Inari emerged and awoke Roboute Guilliman from his stasis casket and healed him of his injuries. Guilliman's first act would be to fight off the forces of the Black Legion from the world of Macragge, and then he would begin making his way toward Terra. Of course, Chaos wasn't a huge fan of that idea, and he was attacked by both demons and demon Primarchs, but eventually Guilliman would finally arrive at Terra and speak with the Emperor. Also during this time, Kull would finally stabilize the Space Marine prototype, creating the Primaris Marines, which are bigger, stronger, and faster than the original Space Marine model. On Terra, the Emperor wouldn't be super helpful, but Guilliman regained his title of Imperial Regent and would begin cleaning up the bloated, decaying Empire, which included killing most of the High Lords of Terra. This began the era Indomitus, where Guilliman began taking back Imperial worlds that had been cut off after the formation of a massive warp storm called the Great Rift. This essentially divided the Imperium into 2 sections, Imperium Sanctus, where the Astronomicon could still be seen, and Imperial Nihilus, where it couldn't. The formation of the Great Rift also increased the amount of demon incursions into real space, and even increased the number of human psychers that began popping up. But around this time, in the end of the 41st millennium, Khorne decides he's tired of making little here and there attacks and wants to go for the big kahuna itself, Terra. The Blood God poured demons onto the surface of Terra itself, and thus began the Battle of Lion's Gate. The Imperium's forces led by Roboute Guilliman were able to turn away Khorne's forces, but this did shake them up a little bit. The sheer boldness of Chaos was evident, and Khorne, upon hearing that he was defeated, grew so enraged that the very walls of his brass citadel shook. Seeing the confidence of Chaos and the growing threats of the Necrons, Orcs, and Tyranids, Guilliman decided enough was enough, and organized the Indomitus Crusade, the largest crusading force since the Great Crusade. The Imperium's forces took back many lost worlds, and word of Guilliman spread far and wide, with him becoming a hero to all Imperial citizens. His forces would soon stabilize all of Imperium Sanctus, but of course, this is 40k, and good things can't last, and around this time, the Death Guard began attacking the worlds of Ultramar. Guilliman knew he would have to handle that soon, but first he had to help out the Blood Angels during the devastation of Baal. The world was under attack by the Tyranids, and without Guilliman's forces, it would have been destroyed. After driving off the Tyranid threat, Guilliman would name the Blood Angel Dante as Regent of Imperial Nihilus, and tasked him with reclaiming as much of the Nihilus sector as he could. We have now entered the 42nd millennium, and it began with Guilliman rushing toward Ultramar to support his sons. The Death Guard had continued their assault and claimed a few worlds for the Plague God, but Guilliman would show up and push back the traitors and would even battle the demon Primarch Mortarion, who infected the Ultramarines Primarch with the God Blight, which quickly overcame Guilliman and killed him. But in his first display of power in a long time, the Emperor said he wasn't done with him yet, and resurrected his son, and wielding the Emperor's sword, Guilliman burned the Guard of Nurgle, wounding the god himself, causing the Death Guard to retreat. And while Guilliman was rebuilding Ultramar, Abaddon the Despoiler was busy making a new friend. Vashtor the Archifane, a greater demon who seeks to be the next Chaos God, allied himself with the Despoiler in order to gain artifacts and make a great key that does something, I guess. The two would set out in great ships called the Arks of Omen to many different worlds to recover fragments of this key. During this time as well, the demon Primarch Angron had made his grand return to real space and went to something called the Coral Engine in Imperial Nihilus. The engine basically behaved like a mini Astronomicon, and Angron didn't like that. Abaddon sent an Ark to support the Primarch, and despite the Imperium's defenses, the world was quickly destroyed, with Angron even becoming an avatar of Khorne himself to destroy the Coral Engine. This unleashed something called the Murder Curse, which pretty much transformed most of Nihilus's fleets to fall to Khorne and begin killing everybody. Next on Abaddon and Vashtor's list was the Dark Angel's flagship, the Rock, which held their next fragment. Vashtor attacked the Dark Angels and would have won if not for the Dark Prince Be'lakor attacking the demon. Be'lakor does not like Vashtor, as he also wants to become the next Chaos God, but while the two were dueling, an Imperial reinforcement fleet arrived, causing the demons to flee without the fragment they came for. Meanwhile, the Blood Angels are investigating some warp anomalies, which turn out to be Lionel Johnson making his grand return to the galaxy. The Primarch, after sleeping off some wounds inflicted by his second-in-command, Luther, went around and either killed or forgave fallen Dark Angels, and together they have been handling here and there incursions in Imperial Nihilus. Meanwhile, the Dark Angels and Vashtor's forces are duking it out on the world of Wormwood, when suddenly the World Eaters show up and begin tearing their way through the Loyalists. The Blood Angels also show up when Dante tries his best to hold off Angron, but Angron's Angron, and Dante gets knocked out pretty quick. As Angron's about to kill the Blood Angel, the Lion shows up wielding the Emperor's shield and duels his traitorous brother. The Lion is skilled, but he is no match for the sheer strength and raw aggression of Angron, so the Lion begins playing defensively, and tires the demon out until he finally beheads him, banishing him back into the warp. Unfortunately, Vashtor was able to gather the fragments he needed, and after assembling them, used the world of Wormwood to tear a hole in reality and plunge into a massive vortex from which he will someday emerge. The Imperium remains in rough shape, with Great Rift still dividing it, but with Guilliman on one side reorganizing and the Lion on the other defending, things seem to be looking up. The Tyranids still remain the largest threat to the galaxy as a whole, after the Fourth Tyrannic War, but they are slowly being driven back as better ways to deal with them are discovered. A new player has emerged in the Leagues of Votann, and we'll see what happens with them as well. Will Guilliman and the Lion ever meet? Will the Golden Throne ever be fixed? Will the other Primarchs ever return? Who knows? But one thing we do know is that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And that brings us up to date as far as I'm aware, folks. There have been some incursions since the Arks of Omen, but I couldn't really find too much reliable data on them, or they weren't really a big enough event to mention here. But anyway, thanks for watching both this video and this series, y'all. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and comment down below what topics or characters you'd like to see me cover next. Be sure to check out my community tab where I'm currently running weekly Primarch battle brackets, and with all that said, I'll see y'all later.